Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the first in this series of 3 webinars presented by the manufacturer on behalf of Oracle. I'm Nick Peters, and I'm the editorial director here at the manufacturer. The title of the presentation today is Industry 4.0, Servitization and the Connected Enterprise. The goal is to bring into sharper focus for you the opportunities and possibilities that the new technologies that come under the umbrella title 4IR, or Industry 4.0, offer manufacturers. Without doubt, we stand on the threshold of a very bold and bright new future where the chance to reach your market faster and know your customer much more closely is within reach of those manufacturers who best understand the technologies and are ready to embrace them. Easy to say perhaps, but how to do it? Here to explain, it is my very great pleasure to introduce Vikram Singla, who's Oracle's Production, Innovation and Supply Chain Lead. We'll also be hearing from Jonathan Gray, who's Operational Excellence and Industry 4.0 Lead at Hitachi Consulting. You can ask questions during the presentation. Just click the Q&A button on your screen, add your name and your question, and the presenters will get to it immediately after the end of the formal presentation. Gentlemen, start your engines. I believe Vikram is going to start us off.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Let's look at the key items that we'll cover today. So first and foremost, we'll talk about why do fourth industrial revolution, basically UK's term for Industry 4.0. Typically, the minute you mention this word, you start hearing all sorts of technologies in a breath. So it's really, really important that we understand, why do we need to do this fourth industrial revolution and put that in a bigger context. The second point is around what are the key principles that you should think of as you start your own practical path to adopt this approach. And then finally, we'll talk about, how do I get started? What are some real practical toolkits, some real practical examples of getting on this journey? Okay, so first, before we start discussing fourth industrial revolution, let's look at some of the mega trends from customers and competition's perspective. The chart on the left, it first appeared in 1980s, believe it or not, first in Harvard Business Review, and so this term called experience economy was introduced. So what it really talks about is how the organizations have been moving to the top and to the right to improve their competitive differentiation and hence stickiness of their offering and the margins as well. We kind of experience this in daily life. For example, if you look at the chart on the right, it talks about how the shift has happened in terms of consuming a simple item as a cake, where in the past, in the so-called agrarian economy, you would buy various bits and pieces. Nowadays, cake gets included in your birthday party experience, and you don't even realize that you're paying for it separately. So the question really is then, how does fourth industrial revolution fit in to improve your competitive positioning? To discuss that, I'll pass over to Johnny and go over in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Vikram. I thought it worth taking just a couple of minutes and provide a quick update on where things are with Industry 4.0 and the fourth industrial revolution, 4IR for short. Now, the term's been around for quite a while now, and I remember producing my first article on the topic back in September 2015. And on the surface, I'd argue that there's good recognition of the concepts and the opportunities. Many different countries have their own version, slightly different language and slightly different focus areas, but the concepts are largely the same. There's definitely more examples of servitization across the industry, and the customer really is driving the pace of innovation and expansion in this area. Now, the need to improve productivity has not gone away and was featured heavily in the recent UK governmental industrial strategy green paper. And the technologies we need to employ for 4IR are continuing to become more accessible and more affordable. Now, that being said, a 2016 report from EFF in partnership with Oracle highlighted that only 42% of manufacturers stated that they are actually familiar with the concept. But despite that, 61% of manufacturers disagree that they find it difficult to keep pace with the change. and 68% are not worried about the competition. Now, this does surprise me. The conversations I've had with clients over the past year or so tell a very different story. Most organisations I meet are actively piloting or seeking to pilot new capabilities, and if not implementing the capabilities required for servitization, they're seriously investigating both the threats and the opportunities to their business that this shift in business model is going to bring. I'd argue that 4IR is real, it's here, and it deserves real attention. So let's remind ourselves of the opportunities and the benefits. Now, we continue to group these under two main headings. Firstly, enabling new service and business models. And generally, we still find that this is the highest priority as the highest threat of competitive disruption. Now, here we're looking at changes to the customer experience, both from the product and the service. And consumerization is really setting new levels of expectation on B2B sales. Product lifecycles in many cases are getting shorter, and therefore reducing time to market is essential for growth. Now, there is a real opportunity to generate new revenue streams, and one of the most dominant trends is the move from product to service to solution business models, and we'll describe this concept of servitization shortly. Then we have a step change in performance. So 4IR should deliver a step change in efficiency and productivity, and it must go beyond that incremental improvement to justify the investment. Now, a major goal of 4IR is to end global labour arbitrage. This is where automation comes in and increased efficiency. If the people cost is prohibitive, then look at where you can avoid this through advanced automation. So suddenly lower cost countries will not have the same advantage they had previously, and the risk to more manufacturing moving from advanced economies diminishes. Now, our customers need greater flexibility. Customer personalisation drives the need for mass customisation, and at the same time as demand volatility supports the need for more elastic capacity and cost models. Now, I think not to be forgotten as well, 4IR is a major driver of environmental sustainability. And if you look at these two things together, you could summarise with one headline, which is we're now looking to deliver mass customisation at mass production prices. Now, you could argue that 4IR and servitization are mostly natural evolutions of existing ways of doing business. They leverage new and existing capabilities. And in many cases, the concepts are not new, however, the technologies are simply more readily available at a more affordable price point. Now, the impact of these evolutions, however, can and should be transformative for many businesses. We combine these capabilities or these common capabilities to create use cases and solutions that generate real business value. You can see that we've not included any specific industrial technology such as additive manufacturing, collaborative robotics, as this is not our area of focus, but clearly part of the 4IR bigger picture. Now, we've split the capabilities into two main areas. The first area, and usually the first stage in building the business case, is to get connected and get integrated. Here you're capturing data from new and existing sensors. Today there are many more things that can be measured, and the volume of available data has increased significantly. Then you get connected, providing close to real-time streams of that data and the ability to then provide instruction back to the device. Now, this process may seem simple. However, understanding what data you need to send and what frequency is a key decision that can have a large impact on costs and functionality. More often than not, you'll need to deploy edge analytics to optimize data transfer on both localized and mobile communications. Now, cloud provides the point of connectivity and the platform and applications to do something with this data. Now, cloud also provides the benefit of easier integration within a customer's value chain, but also the customers and suppliers. This extended value chain integration is not a new idea, but few businesses have really realized the benefits of this capability in full. So once you're connected and you're integrated, you can then create new insights and intelligence and ultimately optimize processes, increasing automation, performance, and productivity. Now, for many clients, just providing access to this more granular, more real-time data can generate new insights that will have a big impact on performance. Now, it always surprises me that despite the investments in business intelligence applications and the continual dialogue on master data management, businesses still struggle to provide easy access to good data and timely information to support decision making. Now, the next logical step is to use simulation techniques on the more granular and more real-time data to support proactive decision making. Again, many companies today are still reacting to results rather than effectively managing future outcomes. We then move to big data. Here we have more data from more sources, structured, unstructured video feeds. Now, there's no doubt that there's more usable data available today than ever before, but actually classic machine learning techniques with easily accessible computing power on these large estates of information can generate new and often previously unconsidered insights and algorithms which can be applied in many areas. Now, lastly, with these algorithms, we can create automation and prediction, or if not full automation in the short term, the assistance to help people make better decisions or take better actions faster and more accurately. As I mentioned earlier, the trend towards servitized business models is one that's really gaining pace rapidly. Now, in essence, servitization is the change in manufacturing companies, enabling them to provide services and solutions that supplement or maybe even replace their traditional product offerings. So we're talking about going from products to solutions and delivering outcomes rather than producing outputs. Now, both Oracle and Hitachi are actively servitizing much of their business model. Oracle with its cloud products, and Hitachi with its many industrial companies offering much more innovative servitized commercial scenarios. Now, a large part of servitization is the development of those new business and commercial models, such as pay-per-use, shifting expenditure from CapEx to OpEx. The examples you're probably aware of are the Rolls-Royce aircraft engines, or Michelin tyres, and even our own Hitachi trains. You've then got performance-based contracts, which are also very popular. So if you look at the US Navy, they've made many of their recent large purchases based on paper availability and have noted significant improvements in performance due to that. Now, yes, seemingly these commercial deals are higher risk, but they're now expected. So what we need to be able to do is to make sure we have business processes capable of delivering against those service level agreements to secure and ultimately improve the profitability of those contracts year on year. Now, if not moving all the way to full servitization, there's many opportunities to sell value-added services, which may come from yourself or an ecosystem of partners brought together to deliver the overall customer solution. Now, this could be operational analytics on your assets that clients can use to improve their own performance. Or it could be subscription services, such as HP, where you're providing toner and cartridges without the customer having to order it, so auto-replenishment. Now, serviceability and reliability are also key drivers, which is where the predictive maintenance comes in. And in some instances, there's also a requirement for greater self-service capability. Now, more often than not, you're going to need to balance the investments which improve service, the cost reduction this potentially generates, which you need to do to stay competitive, and the creation of new revenue streams to fill that gap and allow you to create growth. So both Vikram and I happen to be part of a new council that's recently been set up called TS, or Through Life Engineering Services. Now, their goal is to help the UK manufacturing sector be better at designing, operating and maintaining high-value manufacturing assets over the total asset life cycle. Now, this includes both end products and manufacturing equipment used to create that end product. The goal is to increase asset lifetime whilst maintaining optimum performance levels, so making things work better for longer at lower cost, to the benefit of both the end customer and the supply chain. Now, these kind of capabilities are going to be critical in order to deliver the service-sized contracts that are going to create real value and real growth. Embracing 4IR has its challenges, and I believe that these really need to be tackled head on. So firstly, yes, 4IR is going to require investment in time and money. But one of the challenges is, how do we move to 4IR without dramatically increasing our OpEx and CapEx envelopes? Well, you can address this by making sure that you are setting your priorities based on customer and operational needs, not just technology readiness. Make sure you do understand what you can leverage from previous investments and the technologies that you already have, and then tackle the challenge in bite-sized chunks with clear use cases and ROI. You can co-innovate with suppliers, and then look to actually change the commercial model that you're using with suppliers. So buying services, not products. Having a flexible investment fund will also allow you to navigate through the kind of feasibility studies and the prototypes and the pilots that you'll need to conduct without excessive governance. Now, digitization is going to dramatically change the workforce profile in manufacturing. So how are we going to deal with the shortage of skills and the social impacts? We talk about technology initially enabling workers to perform better, but clearly some roles over time will no longer be required due to technology advancements and automation. Supervisors and middle managers will need to get comfortable working in a more data-rich world where analytics play a lot greater role. and there'll likely be a shortage in some of the core skills that we're going to need, whether that be engineering or mathematics. Now, most governments recognise this and are putting in place plans to increase the available skills. In the meantime, there are many outsourced providers that use World can provide targeted expertise without costing the world. Now, new business models may increase operational and financial risk. So how are we going to make those effective long-term decisions whilst maintaining short-term financial performance? Now, this for me is a real challenge. Many organisations are managing quarter to quarter. However, there's significant benefits in the longer term if you're willing to take more balanced trade-off decisions. Now, I think here the use of simulation tools, painting the picture of life cycle cost, I think these are going to play a key part in decision making moving forward, helping really visualise the potential of these short-term decisions for long-term benefits. Where possible, we should always take an end-to-end approach, engaging multiple stakeholders in different functions. A cross-functional coordination here is key. If you look at the different roles, there's both big challenges but also fantastic opportunities. If you look at supply chain, the sheer amount of data available can be daunting to both its complexity and potentially the perceived cost to leverage. But if you do find particular focus areas, you are likely to have a lot of data that allows you to realise incredibly good opportunities relatively quickly. Now, if you're in manufacturing and production, you've probably invested heavily in Lean and Six Sigma capabilities in the past. Now, 4IR doesn't replace these existing efforts, but augments the existing skills and processes with new digital capabilities. If we look at product development, traditionally kind of only small teams engaged in ideation. Now, leveraging digital technologies, we can democratize ideation and operationalize the innovation culture. So we're really building up a stronger, more virtual team to produce better product and service offerings. In service and aftermarket, your customer needs are very much driving the rapid change in your area. Now, the financial benefits here, though, both in terms of growth and profitability, can make a real step change in performance. Human resource, and we touched on this a second ago. Now, how do we go about reskilling a potentially aging workforce and or finding the new skills in what's becoming a very competitive marketplace? Now, I do encourage the early development of digital skills in the workforce, both in terms of new employees and existing employees. And if you do invest early, albeit in a small area, I think you can really provide yourselves a great deal of competitive advantage over your competition in the longer term. And from an IT perspective, you have the challenges of needing to quickly provision new technology capabilities almost on demand from an existing landscape of potentially disparate systems. Now, with the right platform capabilities, you can deliver that a lot faster with a lot lower risk and deliver a very highly scalable solution. And Vikram's going to cover that over the next few slides.
Thanks, Johnny. Now, let us visually look at Johnny's point around cross-functional coordination. To truly benefit from 4IR, a holistic perspective over various functions across the organization is required. The more you shift towards delivering services or experiences even, the more various functions need to come together a lot faster, a lot more effectively, and a lot more efficiently to deliver an outcome profitably. The customer won't care whether the issue is with a function X or function Z. In a service-centric business model, any delivery issue is basically your issue, and non-resolution of that issue can impact the top line and the bottom line a lot quicker and a lot more substantially. But then that is exactly why the customer pays you the premium to keep that promised service available as per the SLA or the service level agreement that you defined at the start. So now to move along this 4IR journey on a strong foundation, you need a shift in the mindset. So the first shift in the mindset is really to think of end-to-end business processes. I've listed a couple of key business processes on the right. These are, your core processes right from designing and delivering a product, delivering and invoicing an order, and for example, the ongoing care of the product to ensure the promised outcome is delivered throughout the life cycle of that contract. These business processes may cut across various functional boundaries, but the key really is to have that mindset that you need to run them end to end so that you're delivering a reasonable and an efficient outcome for your customers. And the second change is to really think of various visibility dimensions across the ecosystem. Again, I've listed 5 there, including IoT, which is probably talked about the most. So let's look at those dimensions one by one. The first dimension is around market visibility. So the idea here is to really take a lot more consumption data that you can do and really start to leverage that in your forecasting, in your replenishment planning, and so on. An example here is consumer goods manufacturers, those guys taking store level consumption data across different postcodes, across different stores, and so on. The second dimension is around the partners. So this includes collaboration at sort of short to medium term planning level and also execution level down to the minute. So again, with the shift to the service-centric business models, where multiple parties or partners need to come together to deliver an outcome, this dimension around the partner visibility becomes really, really important. The third dimension, that is just simple visibility across the complete organization. Many companies haven't even achieved this particular aspect. The fourth dimension, as I said earlier, is around sort of IoT, talked about the most these days. And examples here include using sensor data to monitor your fleet, monitor your production or assets, and so on. And the final dimension is around social capture. It could be plain and simple, capturing customer sentiment about your offerings, or a little bit more sort of left field, where, for example, a water company, they knew their usage of assets was really high at certain points, and they figured out it was the Super Bowl games, so they kind of now incorporate that event directly in their planning around production. Okay, so with that sort of shift in the mindset in terms of business processes and various visibility dimensions, let's look at how the IT has been evolving over time to support these processes. So a lot of systems were built in sort of early 90s, and when these systems were built, they were absolutely fine for the world of the day. Factory-centric world, building products, and these systems had data models to provide single source of truth. However, as you can see on the chart, so the world changed over time, and a lot of new solution categories came into existence. Categories like advanced planning and scheduling systems, product lifecycle management systems, and so on and so on. The list goes on. Again, no doubt, all of these systems can be and have been integrated together, a bit like old Heathrow Terminal 1. However, beyond a point, this approach would have fundamental limitations to truly support service-centric business model, as the functional needs, for example, require multi-party collaboration, or just simple interactivity expectations that people have from the systems of today. For example, analytics, social mobility, blah, 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 are quite different. So just as an example, to create a report, in the past, you would take data out from your main enterprise systems, throw that into a data warehouse, and then look at the analysis. While that was okay for the historical analysis, in this fast changing world, you really want transactional analysis, decide the actions that you want to take based on that, and then feed those actions back into your execution systems. So now, to kind of get on this 4IR journey and understanding the technology landscape, the key is to have as much of this landscape built on the cloud as possible. The aim is really simple: to run your end-to-end business processes on a technology platform that is always up to date, so that you can meet effectively and efficiently the changing needs and don't have to compromise or customize just because you don't have the latest platform. As mentioned in the past, it was always a struggle as the initial deployment was closest to your requirements of the day, but over time, that platform moved on away and away from what you need. So particular capability, for example, was available in the newer release, but you could not consume that as the initial deployment was customized so much and in such a way that an upgrade for just one feature did not make any economic sense, and you ended up customizing even more. So typically, it would be 5 to 7 or even 10 years before you would upgrade. While that sort of speed was okay in the past, in today's world, that is just not sustainable. And along with sort of keeping your IT in-house up to date, a lot of the systems that you need today should be able to incorporate data along various visibility dimensions that I mentioned. For example, IoT, social, and so on. So now then, we have talked about why leverage 4IR. We have talked about some of the key principles, but the question remains as to what are the key specific things that I can do to make a start today. So what we'll do now is talk about sort of three items. First is, how do I really align my organization around the customer and define the future state? Second is, how do I start leveraging sort of cloud platform that I have been talking about and really experience firsthand security, scalability, reliability of this platform that I may have concerns about. And then finally, some of the operational pilots that I can run within my sphere of influence. Okay, so let's look at the first topic, sort of around this customer experience. So this whole principle is based on something called design thinking that came from Stanford Design School. And the whole philosophy is to really understand your business from outside in perspective rather than inside out, i.e. from a customer's perspective, really understand what is adding value to the customer, what are the key moments that matter to the customer and has an impact on your business. So many a times people use techniques such as value stream mapping, which are a lot more inside out. Basically, you look at what is adding value to your various processes, you take out non-value added piece, but you never really have a customer's perspective in mind. So this sort of technique, very, very simple, but really flips everything on its head and try to understand everything from a customer's perspective. So as I said, a lot of people talk about customer centricity, talk about innovation, and a lot of people come and tell me that they have seen hundreds of videos telling them how to be customer centric, but not a single practical toolkit. It's always easier said than done. So what this technique really tries to provide you is really understand and empathize with your customers, really understand not just their functional needs, but emotional needs, and then educate various departments and various functions within your organization and align them around the customer. And then, as always, you can't boil the ocean. So this thing is all about then picking up one or two key initiatives that add value to your customer, but has a business impact, whether it's top line or bottom line. So pick those and try to innovate around those key moments. And then finally test and pilot and then scale as you get comfortable with that approach. Just to make that point around sort of understanding the customer, this technique is all about try to go into a bit more detail around the emotional aspect of your customers' needs. So the whole philosophy is that your customers' attitudes get built by the experiences that they have with your brand, and those attitudes drive behaviors, which then drive results, whether it's in terms of top line or bottom line. So this whole approach is all about understanding the customer both functionally and emotionally, changing their experience over time with your brand for the very simple outcome, that is in terms of results. So the second point, in terms of modern technology platform around cloud, again, I think it's really critical that you have a mature discussion around cloud and really understand that. For a lot of people, they still think cloud is just about hosting your data somewhere else, but that is a very simple approach to cloud and not really realizing the true benefit. So in our discussions, we see a lot of the conversations have moved dramatically, and they're a lot more about understanding the security, reliability, scalability, etc., rather than people saying cloud over my dead body. So the objective, as I said earlier, around the cloud is very simple: keeping my IT landscape up to date so that I can proactively respond to any changes that the business may need. And as the slide shows, there are multiple ways to start your journey towards the cloud, and they depend on a couple of things. They depend on your appetite, they depend on the time that you have based on the pace of change in your sector, and finally, the extent of choices that you may have based on your current infrastructure. So again, you may start with a single process, a business function, or fully transformational. With that, I'll pass over to Johnny to discuss the third element, i.e. various operational pilots that you can start in your own sphere of influence.
Thanks, Vikram. So Vikram's just talked us through defining the future state and providing the technology platform. Now I'm briefly going to cover demonstrate value and build capability, or operational pilots, we referred to them as earlier. Now we're going to be covering these in a lot more detail in the following two webinars. So here we're really looking at prototyping, either physically or virtually. The goal is to demonstrate the capability and potential value and provide the input required to develop a more detailed business case for full implementation. Now, before I go on, it's worth noting that these activities can and ideally should be going on in parallel. So we've grouped the operational pilots under different connected areas, which are mainly linked to a single functional area. Now, the future state should help us define the customer priorities. And as mentioned on the last slide, we need to look at this alongside operational issues and priorities and identify the focus areas and quickly assess feasibility. So can we do it? In particular, the availability and the quality of required data is a key factor when choosing an area to be able to go and demonstrate capability and value rapidly. So you need to run these pilots in an agile way. You really need to drive pace, and I think for me, that's best done with short burst activities and dedicated team members. So more often than not, time spent on new initiatives has to be integrated or worked around people's day jobs. Now, for even the most experienced professionals, this is a challenge. So constructing these short burst blocks of activity with dedicated core team members will ensure you move forward at pace. Now, a lot can be achieved in 1 week of dedicated time versus 1 month of best endeavours, with the actual time consuming being roughly equal or if not less. Now, beyond feasibility testing, these dedicated team members may evolve into standalone teams, but it's worth holding back on that decision until you're confident on the potential value of the initiative, so you avoid any unnecessary organisational disturbance, cost and delays. Now here you can see a selection of the most common use cases for each of the connected area, ordered by what I call maturity. Now in our next webinars, we'll be exploring the big conversation, so the end goal for each of these areas, and then provide specific detail into the individual use cases with real life examples where available. So to conclude, I think fourth industrial revolution, 4IR and servitization are real. and in my mind require immediate focus. We have many businesses that are moving towards outcome-led business models to improve their competitive positioning. Now, 4IR with IoT and advanced analytics can deliver new levels of performance and will enable those new business operating models. Now, it's critical that we have collaboration between end-to-end supply chain development, operations, IT and business leadership to ensure that we align the investments and the governance appropriately around 4IR. And really there is a mindset shift required to deploy these end-to-end business processes enabled by technology inherent designed to support them. I hope you found that useful, and thank you very much for listening. Vikram and I are now available to take questions.
So we've got basically 10 minutes for Q&A. There's a couple of questions that are in the Q&A window, and I've got a few questions that came in advance. Well, we will make a hard stop. But after we've run the 3 webinars, what we are going to do is collate questions that come before, during, and after the sessions into an FAQ document and send that out after the series. So I guess first question. So how will 4IR affect SMEs and house teams? What steps should be taken for these businesses to raise their capabilities? I mean, I'll give my view on this and then I'll ask Vikram to add to it as well. I think for me, it's not really about will 4IR affect SMEs. I think it's about when the SMEs want to take advantage of what 4IR has to offer. And I think in terms of what steps and what capabilities, frankly, I think one of the core capabilities that we need to build operationally is really the ability to access and manipulate data in new ways. So upgrading our Six Sigma teams with additional data analytics capability. Actually, this stuff is not really sort of new or mind-blowing, but they really are core skills that I'm not necessarily seeing in as many businesses that I work in that I'd like to. So I don't know, Vikram, if you have any comments specifically around maybe the IT skills.
Yeah, I think just to add to your point, really, Johnny, in terms of 4IR, it's not really the size of the business. I think it's kind of part of the broader shift towards these outcome-led business models, and each business needs to respond. So again, in terms of IT, I would say the cloud is one thing that is really quite mature technology right now. So it's kind of something to start with and something to really start taking advantage of from SME's perspective.
Cool. So the next one. So from Ian McKinney. Given the move towards 4IR and the significant momentum in the adoption of servitization, can the panel describe an ideal business model or provide an example of one they've come across that works effectively in the manufacturing sector? I had a bit to think about this as this question came up earlier. I don't think I'd describe an ideal model. I would suggest there are a lot of opportunities to look to the aerospace and defence sector for different opportunities, whether you're looking at, let's say, the classic Rolls-Royce case or maybe looking at the BAE Typhoon availability service deal that I think is incredibly interesting. What I would say is I think there's a couple of fundamental capabilities that most manufacturers should have, and it's not necessarily all the way through to pay per the hour or pay per use. I think manufacturers do need a way to provide customers a more flexible commercial arrangement, reducing those initial upfront capex costs. I think that's a critical one, and that purely can be done by financials. The second one is really being able to provide a more fully managed service. So really being able to sell, maybe operate, definitely maintain equipment that's been sold. And I think the key thing is to be able to do that at more cost effectively and better performance levels than either companies can do in-house or third-party providers can provide. And I think those two for me would be the immediate focus areas. So another question has just popped in. Oh, sorry, that's you again, Ian, so I'll come back to that one in a second. So there's a couple of questions that came up front, and I'll point this one in your direction, Vikram. So it's kind of linked. So how can Industry 4.0 be practically rolled out in smaller organizations who lack the required IT infrastructure?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit really linked to the discussion we had just a minute back, really. So we had in terms of sort of IT landscape in the past, it was primarily the bigger firms that could deploy enterprise grade technology. But I think now with the shift towards the cloud, i.e. subscription-based consumption, IT models, smaller firms can absolutely leverage enterprise-grade technology and start from there.
Okay, good. So there was a quick response from me, and I think actually we covered this a little bit. So 2 barriers of adoption to servitization of finance and support to transformation of business model and increased complexity of contracting. I do agree that they're enablers. And it's fair to say that we've gone down a more, let's call it technology and operational focus route, but I do fundamentally agree that investments need to be made around understanding how to contract in these environments. So another question I'm going to put into your direction, Vikram. So how do you get leadership buy-in to 4IR?
So I think we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier when we talked about the future state. And again, I think winning the hearts and minds and aligning different departments around this is really, really important. So the real practical, toolkit that people can use that I mentioned earlier, so the design thinking approach, where, rather than kind of discussing internally, you really understand, various customer personas. And again, it's probably not just one size fit all. There might be 4 or 5 key personas, i.e. 4 or 5 key customer segments that you need to look after. And you kind of try to understand them, where they're going, what is the key value that you are providing so that they can do business with you, and then really align your organization around that and get the buy-in from the top. So I would say that would be, a real practical toolkit to kind of get the leadership and the departments going in the same direction.
Super, thanks. Desperately waiting for Alan's question to pop up, but it hasn't popped up yet. So one more quick one for you, Vikram, before I go to another one that's just popped up. How do you overcome the security risk objections for cloud applications?
I think that's a very good question, really. I think the minute you mentioned cloud, you probably mentioned security as well. I think the key is to really understand that security in a bit more detail. I think we're quite further ahead in terms of just having that perception. I think it's felt like, maybe 10, 20 years back, you would have thought, okay, if I go on internet banking, is it safe? Is it not safe? And so on. So from our perspective, from Oracle's perspective, when we look at cloud security, there are a lot of dimensions that we look at. Just to give you some examples, we talk about data residency. Where is the data going to reside? Data encryption, both sort of at rest as well as in transit. Compliance laws. Again, each country has a lot of laws around data privacy and so on. And data center access as well. For example, who can access data center, who has admin access, blah, blah, blah. So when we talk of security, there are a lot of different dimensions, and we really put a lot of focus around that. And just to give you some perspective, we already transact about 50 billion database transactions in the cloud per day. So I think the key is to really have a kind of a good, mature discussion as to how different vendors secure their cloud and then take it from there.
Good. Okay, so we're pretty much up on time, but I think I'll just pick one more quick question and give a very short answer if I can. So servitization seems more applicable to manufacturing where an ongoing service contract consumables are used in the life cycle of a product. Can you see or explain the benefits, if any, of servitization in FMCG? It's a bit more of a tricky one, I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of the work that I've done around servitization has been in the high-value manufacturing, so more expensive products, which normally have kind of contracts wrapped around it. One of the things we are exploring, though, is maybe not FMCG, but looking at how you can apply those principles to other products. And I think one of the underlying principles is how can we actually deliver ongoing engineering services to increase the lifetime of that asset, should there be an asset life cycle that makes sense. I mean, I think it's a really good question. I don't have a specific answer, but I think definitely the FMCG side is going to come down a bit later. I think there are opportunities from a manufacturer looking at how they treat and work with their suppliers in FMCG. And I'd be looking at kind of turning the servitization focus, at least in the short to mid-term, towards them. So how can you servitize supply to give yourselves the flexibility in your cost model and the profitability you need with all the variability that we've got to manage today? So I really appreciate the questions coming through. There's a couple that we haven't answered, and there's a few more that came through in advance that we haven't responded to. As I said originally, we will put these together in an FAQ document, and we'll send this out to you after the third webinar is complete. So I think we're done. Thank you very much. I hope we get to speak to you again in the webinar that we're going to have next week, and our contact details will be on the follow-up. You're very welcome to reach out to us directly.